welcome once again to Sid Caudle from the Christian People's Alliance. Sid, we've got a lot that makes us mad coming out this very day. And there are a number of things we'll concentrate on. Two things, if we may. The first, of course, is Rachel making excuses, flying kites with this wretched conference that she'd summoned everybody to number 10 Downing Street. Not much has come out, if anything. It looks as though she's going to have to raise income tax. Who knows? But we're not any real nearer the truth. What did she do it for? It's just a waste of time.
Yeah, totally. And it annoys me because, as I've said before, when Keir Starmer's put under pressure, he just basically says you have to wait for the budget, which is November the 26th. And I can't tell you anything in advance. But then we have all these drip fed as to what's going to happen in the budget. And the Labour's going to have to increase income tax. They don't need to increase income tax. What they need to do is to cut spending. And if they cut spending, particularly spending on Quangos, which has gone up by 88 billion, that would solve the whole. And, I can explain more about that if you wish, but that's a simple truth. And it annoys me, frankly, as well, that Reform haven't yet got hold of it. Because yesterday, Nigel Farage was saying, we're not going to be able to cut income tax at the moment because we can't afford to. And Mel Stride, as the spokesman for the Conservatives, has been attacking the Reform policy and basically saying they're going to cut taxes by 140 billion. They don't know how they're going to pay for it. It's easy to say how you're going to pay for it. The fact is that the Conservatives put up spending on Quangos by 100 billion in real terms between 2010 and 2024. And as I say, Labour have put it up since then by another 88 billion on top. So that's 188 billion we're talking about. And the fact is, all you need to do is to simply say, over the next 5 years, there's going to be no change to any regulation unless literally a new industry is introduced that needs to be regulated. Otherwise, there'll be no change to any regulations for the next 5 years. And in terms of enforcement, all the regulations that exist now will still be in place. We'll have a light touch to enforcement. We're not going to rigorously enforce them. If some problems arise, we'll deal with those problems. But we don't actually anticipate there'll be any problems at all. So we'll have to see. But if you do that, the total cost of Quangos, by the way, is now 353 billion. So we think we can easily save 200 billion just simply by making that announcement. Now, that's what you need to do. See, what Reform have said they're going to do is to review all the regulations. Now, if you review all the regulations, what happens is the civil service get hold of the review. They announce that they're conducting the review as requested by the government. They then apply loads of new jobs for this review. They take 2 years doing it. At the end of 2 years, they say, well, we thoroughly examined all regulations. And unfortunately, we find that they're generally all necessary. And the maximum saving we could make would be 10 billion. And the whole thing would be utterly farcical and a complete waste of time. That's what would happen. What you need to do is to say no change to regulations, a light touch to enforcement. We're getting rid of all these jobs. Day one.
Well, the problem is they're incompetent totally. Whether they've not got the intellect or the business intellect to run a bath tap. Never mind a country, never mind a company. And therefore, they have to go to the civil service, cap in hand. The Blob. And the Blob are completely woke, left-wing liberals. They're not going to change their tune. So the government has to march to that tune. And we're stuck in a vicious circle, basically. Nothing's going to happen because they are totally incompetent.
Yes, but the reality is that they hadn't thought through what they were going to do when they came into power. You see, they produced this manifesto, and in the manifesto, some of these Quangos, 28 Quangos they created, were mentioned, and some weren't. But the manifesto said we're going to increase tax by no more than 9 billion. And what the manifesto said was any other further money we need will come out of existing budgets. But they knew full well that they were going to set up these 28 new quangos. That didn't happen by accident. That was planned, even though a lot of it wasn't in the manifesto. But what they didn't understand was that these new quangos they were setting up was going to cost another 88 billion, and they hadn't worked out where the money was coming from. So they created this black hole. And Rachel Reeves can blame Brexit and blame austerity and blame the Conservatives and blame everything she wants to, blame Trump and blame tariffs and and blame everyone she wants to. But the reality is she's created the black hole, or Labour have created this black hole by setting up all these new quangos which were unfunded. That's the reality of it. And they're now saying, oh, it's unfortunate, we're going to have to increase taxes. It's not unfortunate, and they don't need to increase taxes, they just need to cut spending, and the economy will be sorted out. And that's the reality of it.
Right. There was a real insult, as far as I'm concerned, to GB News, whose Chopper, their political pundit, was there on the front row with his hand in the air wanting to be asked a question. Now, this very day, it's been announced for the fourth month running, GB News has actually got the biggest audience, including the BBC, way ahead of everybody. That's what people are watching. And they were ignored. I think they were taking questions, or she was taking questions, from the Dandy and the Beano at the end. Everybody was rolled in so that she wouldn't have to answer important questions from GB News' point of view and from the right side, where the public are, middle to right. It's a stitch-up, Sid.
Well, absolutely. And this mirrors what Joe Biden was doing, because, when Joe Biden was president, he had his list of reporters who were going to ask the questions. He got all the questions in advance. He got his answers prepared in advance. And the whole news conference was a complete farce. And sometimes even then he struggled to read out his answers. He'd read out something like, pause for applause or something, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm not supposed to read that bit out. Sorry." It was just ridiculous. But you see, the Labour Party now think, "Oh, we need to manage the media better," just the way the Democrats manage the media. And probably behind the scenes, Tony Blair is saying, "Oh, when I was in power, I managed the media. You need to do more managing of the media." But the problem they've got is, as you say, we haven't just got the BBC and the ITV and Sky News now. We've also got GB News and Talk TV and some other media, which people are watching because they want to watch it. And it's difficult for the government to control the media. But controlling the media is not the problem. The problem is the way they're running the country. And they need to change the way they're running the country, not change the way they manage the media. It's farcical, frankly.
Well, we're over the other side of the pond, Sid. The truth always outs eventually. And somebody's dug up some fairly recent video of the real president of the United States under Joe Biden's watch, if you can call it that. Barack Obama, we all know that. And he said, I think 18 months ago, in a conference, we've got to control, what he really meant, social media. He didn't mention that phrase, but that's what he was talking about, because he saw that the ordinary folk were watching this. And it's the government's responsibility to control what we watch. Now, this is socialism to the far left, and this is what we're getting in the United Kingdom and many other countries. As I repeat, the truth outs in various ways, and this is what is happening.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, and but we thank God for GB News and the Daily Mail and the Daily Express. A lot of things they say are very good as well. There is media out there now which they can't silence, and the reality is that even presenters that have been on GB News and sacked, like Dan Wootton, are finding an avenue on social media. I follow Dan Wootton now on Substack, and he can get his point of view across there. So even when you're sacked on GB News, it doesn't mean that you're silenced. In today's world, I mean, they're trying desperately to get Ofcom to silence these people, but unfortunately, they can't silence the majority of people in the country, and that's the way things are turning out now.
You've mentioned Dan Walton there. The two Marks are both either on Talk News and Ofcom have got their own way via government and have got rid of them. This is terrible. This is censorship by our government. Ofcom is involved again, and we know where they stand on many things. We are being gaslit, Sid, and we're not appreciating that.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. But you see, at the end of the day, I mean, one of the things that Margaret Thatcher said is you can't buck the market. And it's the reality is, you can't force people to watch BBC News, and you can't force people to watch ITV and Sky News if they don't want to. And that's the world that we're moving into now. People are no longer wanting to watch this controlled media.
Well, I can't wait to see what the Donald does against the BBC. He's not going to let them get away with this. And I'm referring to the Panorama incident. And I was watching Panorama, not that particular programme about Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians. And it was so left-wing bias that the other side didn't have a chance, the Israelis, etc. And it was absolutely massaged from beginning to end. But when this news broke yesterday about the editorials surrounding January 6th, this was blatant. You can't edit a programme to say the opposite of what everybody was told, but the BBC did it. It's lost so much cred worldwide. Trump is suing various media outlets in the States for a far lesser sin than that.
Well, yes, I totally agree with you. And, I watched what you're talking about. If people don't know, this was on January the 6th, 2021. Trump was making a speech to 500,000 people, which incidentally started an hour late, which messed them up a bit. And at the beginning of the speech, he said, after I finish speaking, we're going to march together to Congress, and we're going to speak to our congressmen, and we're going to do it peacefully and patriotically. And at the end of the speech, almost an hour later, he said, it's no good sitting on your sofa, and just watching. He said, the days come when you've got to get up and you've got to take action and you've got to fight, because if you don't fight, you won't have a country left. And the BBC spliced these two bits together. So they spliced Trump saying, it's when this is finished, we're going to march on Congress. And then the next thing he was saying was, and we're going to fight. And if you don't fight, then you won't have a country left. Implying that he was actually telling them that they had to go to Congress and fight, which was not what he said at all, because they spliced that bit and the bit that he said an hour later together to present a completely dishonest impression of what he was saying. And then they showed pictures of Proud Boys and FBI mixed among them, which we now know, we didn't know at the time, but they are marching on Congress. Now, they were doing that at 11 o'clock before Trump had started speaking at 12 o'clock. He spoke between about 12 and 1:15, Trump. So they showed you these pictures of these Proud Boys marching on Congress, and they were doing that an hour before Trump had started speaking, but they were implying that they were doing it in response to Trump's speech, which again was completely dishonest. And what actually happened, by the way, is that these Proud Boys and FBI marched on Congress with about 5,000 people in attendance at that time. They broke down all the barriers, and they got into Congress and broke down the entrance to Congress. And all that happened before Trump finished his speech. All that happened before 1:15 when Trump finished his speech. So when the 500,000 people who Trump was speaking to left his rally, They arrived at Congress sometime later to find all the entrances open, all the doors to Congress open, and they could just freely walk in. None of them were involved in any violence at all.
Dreadful situation. And we use the word evil, Sid, and I'm
Yeah,
going to use it about the BBC. When you look
that's
at
right.
how it was founded, that plaque in Bush House and the entrance saying that this is for the glory of God, etc. And look where it is at the moment. We've got to put up with a paedophile being glorified, the entrance with this statue. We've got to put up with their woke, gaslit programming at every juncture. Nothing better than in the straight journalist. In fact, I was listening this morning to a lady journalist that worked 10 years at the BBC and saw what was happening. Then she got out and she actually said and quoted, "This was only a matter of time. The BBC have gone completely to the left. More so, they've gone very pro-Muslim, very anti-Christian. It's all
Well,
part of it."
well, yes, you see, and what's so annoying about what I've just told you is that the BBC were actually feeding into a far left narrative that Trump had caused the riot and Trump was a criminal and a criminal that had to be stopped. That was the far left narrative. And the truth was, again, you see, that Trump had actually said before the rally that he authorized uh, 10,000 troops to be there to guard Congress. But Nancy Pelosi, who was responsible for the security, basically vetoed it and said no, she didn't want them there. Now, you see, but when they actually questioned this in Congress, when they had the Democrat-only committee to investigate what happened, they also said no questions can be asked of Nancy Pelosi. Only Trump must answer the questions. You see, but the BBC was feeding into this narrative and basically trying to tell everyone in Britain that the Democrat narrative was true and Trump was a criminal. And then, of course, after this, we had all these other ridiculous trials of Trump, which, you know, they were also feeding into. And you're absolutely right. The whole thing was a lie. The whole pro-Muslim narrative is a lie. The whole anti-Semitic narrative is a lie. And if you see, the problem is, I mean, I remember speaking to one of my children who watches the BBC, and I tried to tell her, you know, the problem is that a lot of what the BBC say is just complete lies. And she said, "Oh no, 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 I don't agree with that. I think what the BBC say is the truth." You see, there's an awful lot, and maybe no longer the majority, but there's still an awful lot of people in this country, ordinary people, that think what they see on the BBC is truth, and that they're being told the truth. And you know, it's now proven it's not. You know, and it's terrible, frankly, that they're doing this and they have to be stopped.
Well, perhaps the public will wake up when the doormat is adorned with a letter from the BBC announcing that you will be a criminal if you don't pay this £180 a year. Really? They can't do that any longer. Well, they can put you in prison, I suppose. But there's so much on offer out there, far cheaper than £180 a year, and much of it much better as well. We got to move on, Sid. And if we think we're in danger on all sides, I think we are. This workers' rights bill that the lovely Angela Rayner had got going, coming from the far left, of course, if you go into it in detail, you could not run a business. Now, there are signs they may backtrack, because if this bill goes through, the workers will have more rights than any other country in the world, including Russia and any other communist state. From day one, they can take an employer to tribunal, and they will, believe you me. Even the Resolution Foundation is absolutely left, but Labour take a lot of what they say as being gospel, has said you can't pass this bill. It would take any rights employers would be just forgotten. You might as well give up. Now, when their own side are turning themselves on the own side of the government, you've got to start thinking twice, Sid. This is a bad government. They're tainted by their masters, which is the backbenchers, of course, far to the left, and tainted by their philosophy, which comes first rather than reality.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, what this government is doing is taking us back to the 1970s, frankly. And I remember a friend of mine who was a lawyer when I was a student, who just used to say how terrible some of Barbara Castle's reforms were, and how terrible all this, the way they were treating landlords, and and they're making it almost impossible to rent a house, and all this sort of thing was going on in the 1970s. And what was the result of it? The result of it, we then had a general election on who runs Britain, because we had so many strikes and trade union leaders demanding this and demanding that, and so on and so forth. This government's trying to take us back to those days, trying to undo all of Margaret Thatcher's trade union reforms. The next thing they'll probably announce that they're getting rid of the secret ballot. You no longer have a secret ballot before you strike. There's no longer any, they're trying to undo the whole lot and give trade unions power. But you see, it's folly. It's absolutely folly, because they're going to create this beast, which is the trade unions, and they won't be able to control them. You see, we're already we're going to support the Green Party because we're not happy with the way that the Labour Party is running the country. So they're already losing some trade union leaders, and they're not going to have trade union leaders that are going to turn around to the Labour Party and say, "Oh, thank you very much. Yes, you're wonderful. Yeah, we love you, and we're going to make sure all our members to continue to vote for you." That's not what's going to happen. They're going to make the trade unions incredibly powerful, and the trade unions are going to use their power and going to be telling the Labour Party what they've got to do. And it's already happening to a degree, but it'll happen to a greater degree. And and the whole country again will become ungovernable. But it's just farcical. And also, incidentally, in addition to giving the trade unions more power, in addition to giving tenants more power, and they're also doing this tax and spend. That's what's going on with the economy. It's just tax, 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 spend, spend, spend. And it's just, it's already proven not to work. We know it doesn't work, but they haven't learned the lessons of the 1970s, because most of these people weren't around then. Those of us that are a little bit older remember what it was like and know that they're taking us back to an absolutely ridiculous state of affairs.
Back to the union, Sid. The old adage there is, you cannot have trade unions supporting one party. They should not be allowed to be able to fund the socialist Labour movement, because, it makes it even more left-wing. But how you change that, you tell me, is it possible?
Well, you see, we've still got the political levy, which the Conservatives were at one point did decide that they wanted to attack the political levy, but it's still there, but voluntary. But nevertheless, I mean, there's a lot of trade unions will just automatically add it onto their union dues, which are paid to the wages. So, you join the union, you pay your union dues to the wages, and part of your union dues, which you pay through your wages, go to the Labour Party. That's what the political levy is. And while that system is in place, it's impossible to stop somebody joining a union and paying the political levy if they want to. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, have they already won? I mean, you've got kite flying, I know, on one level, 4% increase in the minimum wage. We could do with that like a hole in the head, but that is a possibility following the budget. Look how much they've paid to their masters, the Labour Party. Twice as much, i.e. 6% pay rise for everybody. If you're in the private sector, you've had 3%, half as much. That with their gold-plated pensions, not being able to sack them, it's a nightmare. Doctors want, having had 30%, junior doctors, let's call them by their real name, not their new name, 22%, and they've rejected it. They're going on strike again. Another question for debate, they shouldn't be allowed to. Look at the train drivers, average wage £70,000, and you can earn £100,000 quite easily with a bit of overtime. They now want to reduce their working week to 3 days for their £70,000. You're just giving in to the unions the whole time. It doesn't work.
Yes, you see, it's interesting. You see, the Labour Party love increasing the minimum wage because they think it doesn't cost us anything. So it's like, we can announce we've increased the minimum wage, and they don't have to raise taxes to increase the minimum wage. It's all the burden is on business. But the problem is that when you increase the minimum wage, the people that are earning a bit more then say, well, I want a wage increase. As my colleague here who's emptying the bins and cleaning the room, they've just got a 6% pay rise, and I'm here, doing the sheets and in the hospital and doing, but I was earning a bit more than them because I'm doing a bit more responsible job than them. So I want an increase. And then, of course, everybody else says, and then the nurse says, I want an increase. And the doctor says, well, I want an increase. They're getting an increase. So everybody wants an increase. And then you end up, like you say, everyone gets an increase because we've increased the minimum wage. So everybody has to have an increase. And then, of course, because it's happened in the public sector, then you've got to raise taxes to pay for this increase. This is where their first black hole came from, because one of the first things they did when they came into power was to increase wages for everybody who was on strike. And so they just basically said, yeah, we'll give you an increase, no problem, vote Labour and we'll give you a pay increase. And of course, it's a wonderful incentive to get people to vote Labour, isn't it? Because, we vote Labour, we'll have a pay increase. If we vote Conservative, we won't. So let's vote Labour. So, so they all voted Labour, but they didn't realise that this would also cause problems with inflation, you see. So inflation's gone up from 2% to 3.8, and it'll probably continue going up because wage increases also drive inflation. So they're causing those problems. So although they're getting wage increases, you see, it's interesting. You see, they say, oh well, we've got lots of real terms wage increases because average wages are going up 4.8%. But they don't say that actually in the public sector they're going up by more than 6%, in the private sector they're going up by 3%. So if you're in the private sector, you're actually losing money because your wages are going up less than inflation. It's only in the public sector that you're actually making money because your wages are going up in real terms. But by empowering the trade unions, they're just causing enormous problems for the country. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't go back to the 1970s inflation, which went up to as high as 20% before they went to the International Monetary Fund to bail the country out. That's the direction which we're going at the moment, which incidentally happened in 1976.
Well, we're not the only ones in trouble. I'm going to test your mettle, Sid, this morning, and I'm going to quote Canada and Mark Carney, Prime Minister of. How much damage did he do under the Tory Liberal government when he was head of the Bank of England? I think he did a lot of damage. And you can see that because Canada's gone completely woke. But I tell you what, Trump has tamed them. They let this advert go out, one of Ronnie Reagan's adverts, criticising the way Trump did things, especially the tariffs. And Trump didn't like it. And what did he do? Did he do a Starmer and just take it and think, oh, it'll go away? No, you got to pay 10% more tariff, said Trump immediately. And it brought them into line. Now, we've got no leadership in UK like that. Wish we had. Get Trump out, can we? After he's finished another 3 years. Let's bring him over to the UK. Or will it be too late?
Well, you see, well, first of all, as far as Mark Carney is concerned, it's quite interesting. You see, he was head of the Bank of England when we were having the Brexit referendum. And he was trying to tell us that we had to stay within the EU, and the EU was vital to the economy, but no one believed him. So he didn't actually achieve his main objective of being head of the Bank of England, frankly. So it's not surprising that after we'd all voted to leave the EU against his advice, that he decided that he needed to leave, because he hadn't really achieved his objective. So it's best if he left and went. But yeah, so he then went back to Canada and has become president of Canada, Prime Minister of Canada, where he's probably feels as though he's achieving a lot more than he did as head of the Bank of England. But that's Mark Carney. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, you see, the thing about Donald Trump is that he came to power in 2016 with fairly clear-eyed policies of what he wanted to achieve, including drastic tax cuts and so on and so forth to revive the economy, as well as other things. But he didn't have any political experience, so didn't know how to implement his policies. He came up against enormous inertia from the civil service in America and from what was called the deep state in America, which basically attacked him viciously. First of all, with the Russiagate scandal, which was only brought in to mask Hillary Clinton's laptop problem, because she'd been using a laptop for government business, which she wasn't supposed to, which was criminal. But in order to get attention away from that, introduced the Russia scandal, which was just complete nonsense. And they had a complete investigation into it. And when they completed the investigation, they said there was no collusion. But this lasted for the first 2 years of Trump's premiership. Then as soon as that was over, they introduced another impeachment over a phone call regarding Ukraine, which again was complete nonsense, because Trump was just talking to Zelensky about the fact that Biden was actually trying to stop an investigation into Burisma, which his son was on the board of. And Trump said to Zelensky, "I think you need to look into that. It seems awful to me." And that's what he said in the call. They tried to make out that he'd said, "I want you to dig some dirt on my political opponent." He never said that at all. And what they didn't know when they launched it was that Trump actually had a transcript of the phone calls, so he could actually prove what he'd actually said. And it was also proven that Schiff had just completely lied about what Trump had said. This was all proven, but because they were controlling the narrative, they still pushed it through. They still pushed it through to impeachment in the Senate, but the Senate basically didn't pass it. But you see, then that spent another year or more of Trump's time in office having to deal with that. But despite all of that, he still managed to do an awful lot as president the first time round. But it was incredibly difficult for him because he didn't understand Washington. And also he was very reliant on Mike Pence, who was basically, we now know, basically working for the deep state. So it was very hard for him. But then he had 4 years out, which, in 2000, most people were very disappointed that Trump was removed from office. I say that rather than saying he lost the election, because most people think he didn't actually lose the election, but he was removed from office. So he was then removed from office. But in retrospect, that was a godsend, because he then had 4 years to plan. And he spent that 4 years planning what he was going to do when he got back in 2024. And he's come back in 2024, and really this time he's got his own people in place. People that he knows, people that he can trust. He's got an excellent vice president who is complimenting him and going around the world supporting his policies and supporting his objectives. He's put in place tremendous things, and he's the complete opposite of Starmer. Because just as Starmer was completely unprepared for office, Trump was totally prepared for office and prepared for what he was going to do. That's why he's been able to be so strong and so effective as president, and God bless him. God bless him.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? We've got to fly, Sid. Time has gone, but we must mention a couple of things before we go. Bill Gates seems to have had a conversion.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting because he was the leading light funding the green thing for donkey's years, and he's realised that there won't be many people left to enjoy clean air if this wretched system goes ahead. And all the money's being piled into green, the people, real people, most of them in poverty, will not be there to enjoy the clean air. And we've got to tackle that first. Now, whether this is a true conversion or a political alignment, who knows? But at last he's come out with this scientific truth. There's so much nonsense, especially in the UK, who contribute to the carbon footprint 1%. We'll change the world. In the meantime, the grannies are dying of cold in the UK. And that's what he's really saying. It is total nonsense. There is hope after all, Sid.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting. I remember my professor of biblical studies said the truth will out. He said you can only tell lies for so long, but in the end, the truth will out. And that's what seems to have happened in this case. I mean, Bill Gates has been looking at the facts, and he's a clever man, and you can only spend so much time looking at the facts and just not realizing that the whole climate agenda is just a hoax and complete nonsense. And he's finally actually said it. But he hasn't said it exactly in those terms, but he's basically said the climate isn't important. What's far more important is that we have advances in medicine, and we help and support people that have got medical needs. Is far greater need than trying to change the climate. And of course, he's absolutely 100% right. And I very much hope this is the beginning of something. You may be interested to know, by the way, that Bill Gates, that Kim Clement prophesied some years ago before he died. I mean, so we're talking about 15 years ago, that Bill Gates would open a portal to bring financial blessings on the church. So up to now, there's been no sign of that whatsoever. This may be the first sign that that prophecy will be fulfilled. And, let's hope it happens. Let's hope that Bill Gates goes all the way and starts opening his financial riches to the Christian church, because, it's got to happen if that prophecy is going to be fulfilled.
Interesting. You said just before, God bless, and there's not many people that would be so bold as to say this, the Donald. But I tell you what, you're right. And of course, the reason being is he's trying to tackle something that's been going on in Nigeria for a long, long time. It's Boko Haram, of course, in the north, killing priests, nuns, anything that's Christian, and the government there does nothing. But the Donald wants to say, and has said, I'll take this personally. I will send in troops, basically, aeroplanes, and get rid, annihilate, sounds like Gaza, these mad people that are just killing Christians because you don't know anything about it. Now, I'm going to ask the question, Sid, and we could spend hours discussing this. Is it right for any government to invade another country to get something wrong put right? Because that is their territory, their country. Has he gone too far? We don't blame his intention. He's absolutely right. But are there other ways of doing it?
Well, Trump's intention is not to invade Nigeria, but to put pressure on the Nigerian government to do something about the killing of Christians in northern Nigeria. But the response of the Nigerian government was denial. They said, oh, no, there's no Christians being killed in northern Nigeria. It's just Muslims fighting Muslims. It's just other Muslims being killed. That's what the Nigerian government have said. That's just a lie. I mean, as if Boko Haram is just killing fellow Muslims. We know they're not. We know they're killing Christians. We can actually name the names of the people that have been killed. Plus, the Fulani tribesmen have also been attacking Christians. You know, we've got pictures. We got, you know, we know the people. You know, they've been taking off all those Chibuk girls that they took off and married them. You know, and then pretended they'd all converted to Islam. You know, it was we know what they've been doing. And the fact the Nigerian government saying, oh no, there's no problem, there's no attacks going on against Christians, it just shows what a terrible government the Nigerian government is. But no, Trump's intention is not to put in troops. His intention is to get the Nigerian government to say, oh, well, we better do something about this, because if we don't, then there's going to be troops coming from America. If in fact the Nigerian government do absolutely nothing at all in response to Trump's threats, then it'll be interesting to see what happens next. It really will.
Well, it's the most populous country in Africa. It's the richest country in Africa. It's got completely out of hand. Let's hope he frightens them into doing something. He's already said, of course, that he's going to put mega tariffs on them, but let's hope it works. Finally, Sid, we move on. And I've got a question to ask you again. What's in a name? Well, I'm thinking of Gary Lineker and Gary Neville. This is our footy spot, you've guessed. And now I'm thinking of Gareth. Is that short? Is that Welsh for Gary? I don't know. But they're all the same, because Gareth, who never won anything in his life, resigned from the English job, read push as opposed to resign. And there he's saying he's agreeing with the aforementioned gentleman. We've got to be very careful. The flag causes, the England flag, causes divisions. They're all out the same pot.
Yes, and it's terrible. I mean, I don't. I think Gareth Southgate was a very good England manager, and I think he did actually win something. I think he won the World Under-21 Championship before he became England manager for the first team. But anyway, I mean, you know, I think he was an excellent England manager. I think Gary Lineker was a wonderful footballer. I mean, you know, he scored some wonderful goals. He was a tremendous example on the football pitch. Never booked once in his life, you know, and. Gary Neville was a wonderful player for England as well. You know, I don't doubt the football ability of any of these people, but they've all just got terrible politics. And, you know, it'd be nice if they just kept the politics to themselves. But I suppose you can say, you know, God bless people like Saka and you know, and others that are willing to talk about their Christian faith in public. Because I guess if people are going to talk about their New Age credentials and, you know, in public, then it gives Christians every right to talk about their Christian faith in public, and God bless them for doing that. But, you know, frankly, all this stuff should be kept out of football, really. You know, they shouldn't be promoting Black Lives Matter at football matches. You know, it's just bringing politics into football, and politics should be kept out of football. That's the reality of it.
Well, there you are. There's a strange juxtaposition, as they say. Politics and religion do mix, do they? Politics and football don't. Long discussion we could have on that one, Sid. But we finally move on to golden balls. Who else? He's done it at last. It's Beckham. There you go. So they reckon he's done it because he's big mates with the king. Tree hugging. That's the quality you need. And he's a tree hugger, like the king. And they've decided at last to give him his just reward. I'd sooner give it to Sir David than Sir Gareth, because he has done a lot actually worldwide to prosper in poor countries the sport. But there you go. Will you get your knighthood, Sid? Will justice remain?
No, I love David Beckham. You know, he deserves whatever he gets, and I think he is a tremendous ambassador for Britain around the world. And God bless him. God bless him. I mean, my ex-wife actually said that the only way your name will be redeemed is if you get knighted, because then you'll be called Sir Sidney. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. But I don't look for the praise of men. I look for the praise of God.
There you go. We've got to finish on a high note, and we have done. Thank you, Sid.